Hey everybody, Garcia here, and today I'm taking a look at the latest expansion to Imperial Settlers here. This is Rise of the Empire. Rise of the Empire here is a campaign expansion, kind of. In it, you are going to be playing your regular deck, whichever deck you want to play, and you are going to be given some general goals, sort of global, targets you want to reach, ideally before other players. If you do that, you are going to advance up on 3 tracks that you have in front of you. This is on these new sheets of paper that are going to track your empire, right? And so as you advance up on your empire, you discover new places out in the world, i.e. new cards that begin on the table in front of you in upcoming games. And you buy technology. Same idea. More cool cards, new cards that begin on the table in every subsequent game. But you have to be careful, because if your performance does not continue to improve, if you're not able to buy a new card, then your empire is going to crumble. And that means you're done in that campaign and you are out of it. Now, a big part of what this campaign is attempting to do, and the concept behind it, is that you don't have to, in much like a legacy game, you don't have to have everybody be at the same moment in time, at the same level, so to speak. So I could be running a campaign of this, I could be quite advanced in it, and you can join me at the table, play with me, and we will be on equal footing. That's the idea, okay? You can just jump in anytime in the timeline, and we will, my deck will be much more advanced, I'll have much more going on, but I'll be dealing with penalties that you're not dealing with, all right? Let's go ahead and take a quick look at how this all works together, and I'll see you on the other side. To begin a new game using Rise of the Empire, or to join one that someone else has already been playing, you are going to need one of these sheets here. You'll take one in the antique era. You are going to write down a couple of things up here, and then you're going to get also some tokens that will be used to keep track of your goals down there. And you're going to play a regular game of Imperial Settlers. Okay, your first one is basically a pretty regular game with one main twist. That main twist being, you are going to shuffle up 3 decks of cards, these 3 here. You're going to reveal 1 card from each, and these are global goals that the players may achieve in order to advance on the corresponding tracks here. So, for example, let's take a look at this one here. This one says you want to be Imperial like Augustus. And it says that your quest entails having at least 5 food in your supply. As soon as you have 5 food in your supply, you have achieved this. If you are the very first one to do it, you are going to gain 1 gold, and you are also going to advance 3 steps on the matching track, which means I get a marker or a pencil or something, and I advance on the matching one, which is the center 1, 2, 3. All right? And then this is flipped over. Anybody else who wants to do it can still do it, but they no longer get that first to achieve bonus, and they no longer move 3 up on the track, they move 1 up on the track now. And like I said, there are 3 decks, so you always use 1 from each, some more confrontational ones here, and then a couple of other decks with different feels. All of them, of course, with different characters in there and something they want you to achieve. So that's the first game in this campaign. Once that game is over, we're going to calculate our score. And you're going to write that down right over here. You are going to, at that point, grow your empire. And the way you do that is by drawing a new province and adding that province to your empire. This is going to give you a new card. This is going to give you something that begins in your game, in your tableau from here on out. It is also going to, however, cost you, because you need to maintain this place on the map. It's going to cost you 5 victory points at the end of every upcoming game, and you need to select where this location is. It might be a province right here. I'm going to cross that spot off. In every upcoming game, I need to make sure I have 2 food to give this province. Otherwise, I cannot maintain them, and I will score nothing for that whole game. So I have to be able to do this, okay? And this holds true for every upcoming game on this board. That means at the end of every game, I get a new province, and I check one of these boxes, and they must be given what they need in the upcoming game. Okay, so second game, I need to make sure I'm over my intended score, 10 points. Third game, 15 points. Fourth game, I'm going to get rid of 20 points at the end. Okay, that's the idea. Now, there is a soft reset of that. Once we get to the end here of this board, you are going to carry some things over, but not everything. And you're going to go on to the next age here. Okay, in the next age, you sort of begin as you did before, but you are carrying some things over, and then we do it again. And then if you get all the way back here, then you win the campaign, if you would. All right? But we're not going to worry about that. We're going to stick with just the one. Be aware, though, that you are going through a similar concept 3 times. Now, as you are unlocking spots on these boards, you'll see you get bonuses as well. So, for example, you might begin with an extra card in your hand. You might begin with some gold. You might, if you unlock some of these, be able to not have to pay one of these locations at the end of the game. They are satisfied. You don't need to give up the goods. And so all sorts of things like that. Some of those are represented by these tokens. Some are simply things you take at the beginning of the game. Others are things you deal with at the very end of the game. All right? So that's how that works. Now, another thing that happens, though, is you take a look at your final score. Let's say I got 36 points. And I am going to, based on who won the game. By the way, whoever won the game gets 1 free box checked off. Whoever got the highest score in the game. 1 free box checked off. That does mean that someone who has a really advanced civilization, meaning my tracks are somewhere up here. I'm now 4 games in. I'm losing 20 points, and you're starting a brand new one. We can compete against each other because you're going to have no special abilities. You begin with nothing on the board, so your score is going to be weaker than mine, but I got to give up 20 points at the end of the game. And after I do that, then we compare who's got the highest score. And that person wins. They get an extra box here. So that score you're going to convert into these light bulbs. And then you're going to buy something for your civilization from the matching deck. Okay? So let's take a look at that. This matching deck here has costs in the top corner and some ability. These are all features, and they are going to allow you some special rules. So for example, let's say I scored those 36 points, and I'm going to buy this card, which is going to cost me 30. It says irrigation. It's a feature, and it allows me to store 1 worker in my faction storage. It also has a building bonus of 2 food, so I'm going to get that at the very beginning of the game. And then I write down on my board that I have 6 of these light bulbs left over, and I'll be able to spend those next game. Add that to my score. Say next game I get 38 points. I add those 6. I can now spend 44. Let's say I spend 40, I carry over 4, right? And so on. So there you go. And then eventually you'll buy from there. Eventually you'll buy from that one. All right? So that's the general idea here. Your empire, as you move up and up, and I said, and then you go over to this one and then go over to this one, can, however, crumble, which means hard reset. And the way it crumbles is if you cannot buy one of these cards, or if your score goes down 3 games in a row. Okay? These cards have very high values, by the way. I showed you a 30 there, and there are a couple of 30s, 30, 30, 35, and then some 40s. So we've got here 40, let me find it, 140, some 45s, and then 50s, 60s, 70s, okay? So they are high. If you cannot buy them, and obviously they do go away. If you're playing with more players, more of these are being purchased, right? So if you cannot buy one, you are done. You reset. You get a brand new one of these, or you can just erase one, I guess. You begin from 0, okay? But you can keep going in the same campaign as somebody else because, again, the game sort of self-balances that way. Someone else is farther ahead in their story, if you would, but they're taking bigger penalties. They're getting bonuses, but penalties, on here they're getting bonuses, but a penalty. So it kind of, those two things are intended to even out. So there you go. That's basically it. Next game, you shuffle up these 3 decks again. You reveal a new one from each. You've got your board. You've got your starting stuff. You begin with whatever regions you've got and whatever technologies you bought, and you play again and see how you did. There you go. That should give you an idea of some of the concepts in the game. Let's go ahead and go up top because I'm going to try to describe how the game feels to you and tell you what I think of it. Alright, so that is Imperial Settlers, Rise of the Empire. Let me talk a little bit about this and give you my thoughts. And again, they are my thoughts. The first thing I'll say is, I think this is the absolute last product you should get for Imperial Settlers. If you have everything for Imperial Settlers, you are clearly a big fan, and you want more, this is then something you want to get. Because it expects you, though I wish it would tell you that in the rulebook, to be very honest, but it expects you to be... I don't want to mince words. I think it expects you to be an expert in Imperial Settlers, okay? It expects you to be into deck building considerably. It expects you to know how factions work well. It expects you to know well how to engage in some Imperial Settlers, okay? If you're not that kind of person, you're going to find, first and foremost here, I think, frustration. The game is not easy. It's a fairly punishing game. I'm going to start with my negatives as I do my breakdown here. And I've got some solid ones, okay? I'm going to try not to focus too much on my my breakdown here as far as the categories because it's hard to... I'm going to have a hard time getting across what I mean, I think, if I focus too much on this. But my main negative is the game arc, okay? There's a couple of big issues I have here. The game feels, the progression, let's call it, does feel somewhat artificial, okay? This idea of, the variety is basically, in the first game, I'm going to take 3 stones, and I'm going to turn them in for 6 victory points, and then in my 5th game, I'm going to trade 2 stones for 20 victory points, and then I give you 15 of those points. That's technically in my 4th game, okay? And that feels like growth, but it's not. It's just more to do, right? I'm accomplishing the same thing. I'm just going through more steps, and it feels bigger, okay? That feeling, that sort of concept of expansion. Sometimes, some games I felt like, ooh, I'm getting into it, and in some games it felt like, man, this feels artificial. Yeah, I just made a bunch of points. I'm also giving you back a bunch. These powers on some of these cards don't feel like they translate to 5 victory points. You know what I mean? Some of them are just... Some are great. I mean, some are fantastic. But like this one, Littleman's Village, production, 1 worker. The game is now only 4 rounds, by the way, not 5. So this is basically 4 workers. And I'm giving back 5 victory points at the end. I know that that's not really fair, okay? There's other things I've been unlocking. But you get what I mean. You look at just this card and you go, whew, that's rough. That seems really punishing. So that's kind of where I'm at with the game arc. The other thing, okay, the 4 rounds is good. I think that's a great change. The other thing I don't like is I wish that the campaign was not so stinking long. Going through all this is going to take you, I don't know, let's say 6 games, okay? And then you go through this one. And then you go through this one. That might be 18 games before you actually finish one time through this, okay? I don't need it to be that long. I would love for there to be the ability to stop right here and have a winner. And then, if you want to keep going, carry over some things and play through this one. I just wish that there were stages that you could stop at and go, boom, we played this game. You know, so you got to go through it all to feel like you reached a win, right? I think that's too long. It feels just way, way, way too long. The replay value. I've kind of already talked about that idea of that progression, you know. But there is a lot of variety, right? There's a ton of these cards. There are a ton of the different provinces. with all sorts of special effects. There are a decent amount of these characters you are trying to emulate, right? You want to be like them. So I like that. The variety is good. Just the replay value does feel samey, I think, because there are so many games. Ease of play. The rulebook leaves a lot to be desired, I have to say. Some of the tokens are not very well explained. The general flow of the game sometimes, I mean, the book, for how different this is unlike anything else that has come out for Imperial Settlers before. There's only 6 pages, and they're fairly well spaced out. I just wish that there was more of a breakdown. They also gave you the breakdown on the back here, but it's sometimes a little too... It feels like it was written by someone who knows the game very well. The expansion, I mean, very well. And I wish they would have gone into detail a little more. It seems... I came away, the first time I read this, I came away with a lot of questions. I was able to find some of them. I was not able to find all my questions answered there. Now, things I liked, okay? The theme is great. This idea of growing your civilization. This idea of advancing through time, through technology, is neat. It doesn't make any sense that you have somebody jumping in like the past and fighting you, but whatever. I don't care about that. It's a good theme. It's a good idea for an expansion. The aesthetics are very nice. Artwork on the cards and on everything is lovely. Tokens are good quality tokens. There's not a lot in the box. There's a lot of design in the box. Let me make that clear, okay? I think a lot of thought went into this. But it's, a few decks of cards and some tokens. It's mostly cards. And then the pad of paper. But I have no issue with that. I think it's good. The aesthetics, the quality of the components are very good. Lastly, tactics, strategy, luck. At the end of the day, I like the tactics and the strategy and the things this game, this concept, asks you to do. I like that. And I love those changes over one game. Like any one single setting, any one game of this, I think is cool. Oh man, there's now these goals that I have to complete. Kind of makes me think of Race for the Galaxy. I gotta try to do these things. When Race for the Galaxy had an expansion, this is what they did. Alright, cool. And if I do that, then I increase myself on these little tracks. Oh, and then I unlock. Oh, I begin the next game with a gold now. Right away. That's cool. So any one game, any 2 games of this are great. I think 18 games of this is flat. I think 18 games of this is repetitive. I think I start seeing through the concept. It's just too long. The tactics are really basically the same. They're just fatter. Like I said, it's the same thing, just bigger. Now, from what I understand, they intend for this to be very much about deck building. They expect you to build a deck, okay? The designers do. They expect you to... You can even change that deck from one session to the next, if I'm not mistaken. But the game is extremely punishing. It's very difficult to get a good score, it seems to me. My Empire, it crumbled quite a bit. And again, in my session, I played a 2-player session of this many times over. There was a lot of crumbling, let's call it that, okay? Because, very quickly, the 30s and 35s and 40s are gone from this deck, and then you no longer make the score, and then you crumble. It's extremely frustrating, and you need to deck build. You've got to get what you want out of your deck, which means you need to go back to the drawing board and build something that works for you, that you know you can get those points out of, okay? So be aware of that. I hope that's a very meandering review, I think, but it's because my mind is very scattered about how I feel about this whole game, okay? Ultimately, I think there's a lot here to like, and I think this is going to be a very cool expansion for a few people that are super, super into Imperial Settlers, okay? The big change between Imperial Settlers and the new spin-off from it, Empires of the North, a different game, kind of using the same theme, is that Empires of the North is you pick up a deck and you play. There's no deck building. There is no messing with the system. You pick a deck and you shuffle it and you play that game. And when they come out with more expansions, you just grab that deck and shuffle it and play the game. This is not that anymore. Not at all. Not even close. This is for the person diving really, really deep, okay? You got to build decks. You got to know what everything does. And they expect you to do that or you die in this game, in this expansion. So be aware of that. I found ultimately the experience at the end of the day is, I think, too long. It's too repetitive because it's so long. And it's too punishing. It's too difficult to do well, to feel like you're not basically just drowning. More, and then at the back end you take it away, is not really more. So, this is going to get from me a 6 out of 10. You can push that up if you want. If you are a massive, massive Imperial Settlers fan, and by that I don't mean you like the core game, I mean you've collected everything and you love deck building. You just love it. You could never see yourself going back to the original deck. Then you can push that score a little bit. For me, this gets a 6 out of 10, which is not bad. It's just not amazing, okay? So there you go. Hopefully that makes sense. I know, like I said, that the review's a little scatterbrained. That's how this box makes me feel. So, Rise of the Empire. Thanks, everybody, for checking this out with me. I'm Z Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.